Hello, this is called When the Bell Sounds. It is from the text called The Gateless Gate. This is case 16 in the Gateless Gate, okay? When the Bell Sounds. Uman said, "The world is vast and wide. Why do you put on your seven-piece robe at the sound of the bell?" The world is vast and wide. Why do you put on your seven-piece robe at the sound of the bell? And I'll have to unpack that some, obviously. This is Mumon's comment. In studying Zen, you should not be swayed by sounds and forms. Even though you attain insight when hearing a voice or seeing a form, this is simply the ordinary way of things. Don't you know that the real Zen student commands sounds, controls forms, is clear-sighted at every event, and free on every occasion? Granted, you're free, just tell me, does the sound come to the ear, or does the ear go to the sound? If both sound and silence die away at such a juncture, how could you talk of Zen? While listening with your ear, you cannot tell. When hearing with your eye, you are truly intimate. And this is Mumon's verse. With realization, things make one family. Without realization, things are separated in 1,000 ways. Without realization, things make one family. With realization, things are separated in 1,000 ways. What's going on here, right? This is weird. So the world is vast and wide. So Uman is in Chinese, his name is Yunmen, and he is a very well-known and respected teacher from Zen history. And he has said this to one of his students, I guess, or to a group of his students. He said, when the bell rings, why do you put on the seven-piece robe? So the message here is, and it's sort of, I'm going to talk about specifically what it is and then the grander implications, because there are grander implications to this. It's not really about a bell and a robe, okay? So in Zen temples and on retreats, bells govern everything. There's a bell that rings when it's time to eat. There's a bell that rings when it's time to meditate. There's a bell that rings when it's time for a teaching. I've gone out of my way to not ring a bell in this video, I guess. But because I don't know where my bell is. But bells ring when it's time for a Dharma talk. You hear the bell and you get ready to go hear a talk. So a seven-piece robe, that's what a fully ordained monk wears. So when he says, he's talking to monks. So he says, why do you put on the seven-piece robe at the sound of the bell? He's saying to them, why do you care if there's a talk? Why do you hear the bell telling you there's a talk and you stop what you're doing and you put on your robe and you go into the hall, the Dharma hall where there's a talk, and you sit and you listen? Well, why? The world is vast and wide. Why do you put on the seven-piece robe at the sound of the bell? So the world is vast and empty and boundless. These monks in the story are getting ready and going to hear the talk. They're letting themselves be controlled by the sound of a bell. And the wider implication of this is, when we talk about Buddhism, we sometimes talk about Buddha nature. That is, our true nature is awake and free and enlightened already, and we're just trying to clear away delusion, but we're enlightened already. So the question is, why are we practicing? Why are we meditating if we're already free? Do we need to? Why do we need to put on a robe and go hear a talk if we're already free? Why do we do anything? Why engage in practice at all? If you're awake, why do you put on a robe and go listen? Why do you listen to me? The story is sometimes interpreted as the monks put on their robes because that's the right thing to do. And I think this doesn't really tell us anything. That's not a very interesting koan, if that's the point. Although I think there's something to be said for that. Why do we go listen to talks? My answer is because that's what Buddhas do. I have the same answer when we say, why do we meditate? It's the same thing. Why do we do that? Because that's what Buddhas do. But Uman, in this story, he's challenging them. He's challenging them to say why they practice, but he's also challenging them to say, like, does putting on the 7-piece robe make you more prepared to hear a teaching? Does it matter what you're wearing? Would it matter if the monks, instead of putting on their robe, they came to the teaching in a t-shirt? Would that matter? Maybe there's no difference between a robe and a t-shirt, is there? Are we putting meaning on the 7-piece robe, or does it have meaning in itself? So Uman has kind of put these monks in a trap, because he said, why do you put on the robe at the sound of the bell? So if they respond by not putting on the robe at the sound of the bell, they may get in trouble for not following the protocol. And if they do put it on and do go to hear the teaching like they're supposed to, then he's going to say, why are you doing this? And they need to come up with an answer, and you need to come up with an answer. Why do we put on the robe at the sound of the bell? That is the paradox. And this can we can wonder about many of the things we do, right? There's a lot of occasions in our life where we just do things and we don't think about it. Something happens and you just respond. There's no moment in between for you to think about how you're going to respond. You just respond. And is that a good way to live? I don't know if it is. And that's part of what we're doing in our practice as well. We want to learn how to see koans everywhere. Because there are koans everywhere. There are truths in all our lives. So why do you put on the 7-piece robe at the sound of the bell? Why do you get ready for a Dharma talk? Because the path is everywhere. And what if we are never not in a Dharma talk? That's pretty heavy. What if we're never not in a Dharma talk? Then we're not separating ourselves from our ordinary life by putting on the robe, because the sacred is all around and it's always here and it's always time. You're always learning the Dharma. Always, always, always. And that's the message I get from this. There's awakening everywhere. So why are we bothering? Why are we putting on the robe? Why are we going to the temple? Why are we sitting and listening to a talk? What's happening here? And my answer is because that's what Buddhas do. But I want to know what your answer is. So leave a comment and say what your answer is. Why do you put on your 7-piece robe at the sound of the bell? Thank you for taking the time to listen to this. Next time, we're going to do a koan called A Mistaken Speaking. Okay? Thank you for being here.